Welcome back, sports fans, to the flipped video. This time we're tackling the Industrial Revolution, and we're looking at the impacts of part one of the Industrial Revolution. So I like to divide the Industrial Revolution into two parts. The first part, I think I mentioned already, is the early part, right, where the machines are just starting out and being run by coal. And then we'll look at part two as we approach the 20th century, and we look at machines then run by electricity and gas. Okay, so what are the impacts of the early industrialization? First, uh, urbanization. So what is urbanization? The growth of cities, right? As people start to leave the countryside, so here's the countryside, and they're getting on the train and heading into the cities. And it grows so quickly that a lot of challenges emerge. So we're looking here on the screen at the different challenges of rapid urbanization. So with cities between 1800 and 1850, most European urban areas doubled in size. So with that came crises. You know, people didn't think about dealing with some of these things before. So for example, living conditions, right? People are packed into homes. Sometimes families would live in one room. There's no sanitary codes, no building codes, right? There's no laws to think about what are they going to do about all that garbage and trash. So trash and garbage would be on the streets, and the roads were not even paved, so they'd just be a muddy, messy, gross thing. And then there was not enough housing, right? So families are crowded in to homes, and which leads, of course, to problems. Also, sickness and disease were widespread, especially cholera. I'll let you look up what happens when you have cholera, but diseases spread with filthy living conditions and working conditions, right? The water, dirty water, etc. And so you're dealing with not only these terrible living conditions and working conditions, right, but the environmental impact as well. So a British study, a governmental study in 1842, found that the average lifespan for working class people in the cities was 17 years of age. Compared at the same time, those living in the country had the average lifespan of 38 years. So you can see the toll urbanization takes and the working conditions take on people. Okay, so probably one of the other more significant impacts are the social changes. So we've been talking since the beginning of the year about the pyramid, and it used to be fairly simple, right? Nobility, the knights, peasants. Now, with the age of exploration, we start talking about a middle class, and now with the Industrial Revolution, look how the middle class has expanded. So you still have your nobility, right? They're hanging in there, but they're starting to lose their power as all the people in this box, the middle class box, start to emerge. So we have the upper middle, middle, and the lower middle. And so these are the types of jobs people had that made them middle class. So you had factory owners, merchants, bankers, people at the very top of their industries. And then the middle class, your government employees, doctors, lawyers, mine shop managers, factory managers. And this is what we would call the bourgeoisie. Now I'm sticking on this point, and it will make sense in our next video why the word bourgeoisie is important to describe the middle. And then you had your lower middle, excuse me, factory overseers, skilled workers, and then of course the working class. So outside of the middle class we have our nobility and our working class. And the working class saw little improvement in their living and working conditions, right? That'll be a long time coming. And so we start to see the emergence of class tension. Why would there be class tension? Because check out the political philosophies that we've been talking about, right? That fit each class, and how those political philosophies sort of contradict each other or are often in tension with each other, thus leading to tension between the classes. And so from the 1850s to the early 20th century, we're going to see a lot of changes, a lot of tension, sometimes some civil unrest as these classes sort of figure out their new place in the industrialized society. So how do you know, how do you get from the working class into the lower middle, or what differentiates these two? And you have to look at the status of women, right? On the farm and in the working class, every member of the family has to work to survive. So women, children, fathers. How do you know when you've made it to maybe the middle class that your wife can stay at home, right? Or that your children can stay at home? That idea of a woman's place in the home and that children should have childhoods where they go to school, that is fairly modern, right? This only develops during the Industrial Revolution. So while these women might stay at home, right, while their husbands work, that was a sign of success. But the labor of being at home is huge, right? Think of what it would take to make a meal, right? You don't have any refrigerators, you don't have any washing machines, right? So that takes a lot of work. So how do I see how I jump from the middle class? Soon, not only is the wife staying at home, but the kids probably can stay at home and go to school. And maybe you employ a servant or two, right, to help you with the tremendous amount of work that goes into running a household, right? And then by the time we get up here, right, we've got a billion servants, I'm sure, managing their homes. So that's how we see social changes as one of the major impacts of the Industrial Revolution. Okay, so we talked a lot about the beginnings of the industrialization the Industrial Revolution in Great Britain. So eventually, over time, right, it spreads to the United States, it spreads to Belgium, it spreads to Germany. And so why does industrialization spread to these countries? Remember, go back to chapter 25, section 1, and the factors of production. We can assume that all of these countries have land, labor, and capital, right? Uh, France is missing, Central Europe is missing, right? Remember, Napoleon disrupts so much of Europe that a lot of these countries then lag behind Great Britain. But these are countries with coal deposits, right? Oil deposits, and like Great Britain, right? The first industry to industrialize in the United States, of course, is textile factories. So we start to see a shift in power. As these countries industrialize, they also become powerful countries. I know you're thinking, who cares about Belgium? But we will soon learn that Belgium, a tiny country that I'm sure you could drive through in a matter of hours, will control a chunk of Central Africa. And so we see this power manifested in the building of empires in the late 1800s, right? I think I don't need to tell you how these three countries impact the 20th century. So industrialization spreads beyond Great Britain, and those countries that industrialize become the most powerful. Okay, so we start to see, and we'll talk more about this in chapter 27, a global impact, and we start to see the rise of global inequality. I should say we see inequality in Europe, right? Western countries become industrialized, Eastern countries do not, and we start to see a wealth gap there. But we start to see a wealth gap then in the globe, and the world. Western industrialized nations become wealthy and powerful, and with that industrial might, they impact non-industrial nations of Africa and Asia. So this is coming, and we'll talk more about that later. Okay, so it's not all doom and gloom, right? Initially, it's pretty ugly, and we'll look at how in the next section of chapter 25, how people started to change, right, and make life better. So I'm using our old acronym SPEARS, right? Social, political, economic, the arts, religion, and science and technology to see what are some of the positive effects of the Industrial Revolution. So in terms of social, right, we see the expansion of middle and upper classes. They become very wealthy. Eventually, wages and working conditions improve for the working class, and the amount of jobs increase, right? You're just not farmers, but there's all kinds of jobs. Politically speaking, right, with the expansion of the middle and working classes, democratic efforts become more successful. Economically speaking, right, countries now become industrialized, they become wealthy. The economy is now based in manufacturing, right, not on agriculture. We'll start to see some dramatic changes in the arts, but we're going to come back to that. But something to ponder, right? When the camera is invented in the early 1800s, then what becomes of painters, right? And so art and what it means to society starts to change. Religion, I don't know if we see too much changes within religion, but they certainly meet different institutions of religion change to adapt to the changing society. But mostly a lot of the reform movements that we'll talk about in the next section are led by religious groups, right? They will address some of the problems in the working class. And science and technology, we're going to spend a lot of time talking about the technological innovations and improved science that comes from the Industrial Revolution. Perhaps you've heard the phrase, necessity is the mother of invention. So as they need more things, or as our needs become more sophisticated in terms of manufacturing, right, science and technology change at a rapid pace. And so we'll look at some of those specific innovations. And at the end of the day, lives are better, right? People are living longer, right? They are having machine-made clothing. Food is produced easier. They're starting to have machines in their home to help them live. Science will lead to medical advancements. So while it takes a while, eventually the long-term effects of the Industrial Revolution are positive. Okay, that's it. Hope you've taken close notes. Remember, you can watch this again and again. Maybe with snow days you'll get lonely and you want to hear my voice. Boom, here you go.